You know, there's a big debate going on about what's going to happen post-pandemic in terms of taxes in America and taxes around the world, frankly, to pay for the cost of all of this. You say, tax us. What's the reception that you've been getting from your fellow millionaires and maybe billionaires on this topic?
You know, I think we're getting less resistance than we've gotten in the past. I think that there's a recognition that we've gotten so far out of balance that it's just not realistic to keep going forward as we have. We're contributing so much less to the economy than we really ought to be to the well-being of our fellow Americans. So it's time for us to cough up a little bit more.
What do you tell people who say, sure, if you want to pay more, send the government a check, send Uncle Sam a check. You don't have to up the rates on everybody, but if you're such a philanthropist, if you will, mail your check in, but don't do it to everybody.
So if the world is terribly polluted, I'm not going to fix it by going in front of my house and picking up all the trash off the sidewalk. That's not the problem. The problem is systemic. We need to make this a more fair system that doesn't so much favor the wealthy.
Well, let me flip it around. What about the other argument, which is to say that government has failed us? And actually, you can make the argument within the context of COVID-19 that government has failed us. And in fact, that many of the business leaders, in fact, private industry has been the ones that have actually come out and really helped with COVID in ways, frankly, that the government has not.
Well, there's no question the federal government has failed us, and that's been a failure of leadership. But where governments have failed us, it's because they've been persistently underfunded and starved by this insistence that we take all the money out of the public systems we possibly can. If we had invested more in our health systems, if we'd invested more in making sure that the low income and middle income workers had, for instance, some savings or owned their homes or anything that assures a life that's secure, we would be doing so much better. But you saw how quickly those lines formed at the food pantries. Millions and millions of people who work full time in this country did not have enough money laid by to ensure that they had enough to eat for the next week, much less however long this is going to last.
Let me ask you, is your campaign specifically about individual taxes, or do you also include corporate taxes in this? In
this letter, we're not talking about corporate taxes. We really want to talk about the individual people who are sitting on mountains of money. And let's face it, there were, 20 billionaires in 1980. Now there are some over 600 or something crazy like that. There's money has been concentrated too heavily in a too small population. It needs to be driven across the economy.
What's a fair tax rate? I remember Leon Cooperman came on our program maybe 6 months ago, and he said, look, I'm happy to work half the year for the government and for my fellow taxpayers and half the year for myself. That seems like a fair trade. That's 50%. Frankly, 50% is where we are in parts of America already, given the local, state, and federal taxes.
Well, for wealthy Americans, their effective tax rate has gone from around 50% in the last 40 years to around 23%, which is roughly what the middle class pays. What we have is effectively a flat tax, really, if you take all the taxes, state, local, sales taxes into consideration. We actually are effectively paying a flat tax across the country. I would be happy to go back to the 50%. If that's not politically feasible, let's talk about 40. But we need to recognize that there are people in this country who are so wealthy that a 40% tax rate would do nothing to erode the quality of their life.